Welcome to Ibis Weather. This is Sarah on Thursday, August 14th, 2025. Today we are talking about Tropical Storm Erin, soon to be Hurricane Erin, and the disturbance that is in the Gulf that has recently been increased in its odds of forming something, which was rather surprising, but I guess not really when you consider that we are talking about the Gulf, of course, which is notorious for storms doing what was unexpected. So let's go ahead and get started with the Gulf system. It has been declared 98L. So anytime there's any storm that they're investigating that they think is worth noting, that there's a possibility of further development, they do typically name it 90 something L. And they will go through those. You'll see those numbers come through quite a bit throughout the rest of the hurricane season as more storms pop up. Um, and where they continue to investigate more. So it's 98L right now, so it's not named a storm, but it is a storm or it is something worth taking note of just in case. So, as you can see, it's over here in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, whichever you prefer to call it. We'll just call it the Gulf over here. It's been increased from about 10% to 40%, both for 48-hour development in 7 days. It is expected to move over inland into extreme southern Texas and western Mexico, or I guess I should say southeastern Mexico, is the way it is with their continent or country. Um, so they don't think too much development. It could possibly become a tropical depression, which again would not make it named. It would have a number of tropical depression or something, whatever number is left for the season. Um, so it doesn't seem like they seems to think it will become a tropical storm or a hurricane, which is good news, partly due to, again, because of what limited time it has to sit out there to really kind of organize. Again, granted, we didn't expect it to be increased to have up to, 40% either, as of what we were talking about yesterday. But of course, as I mentioned, weather is something you can always count on it not being what you think it's going to be and not pretending to be what it's going to say it's going to pretend to be. Always expect unexpected, and the storm system is certainly throwing this for a little bit of a loop. But again, I do want to say it's worth noting that it's not too terribly expected to do much of anything other than heavy rains, obviously in northeastern Mexico and southern Texas in the next few days. They do have a hurricane force not Hurricane Force, Air Force Hurricane Hunter flight en route to investigate the system. So probably within the next model runs later on tonight, and definitely by tomorrow, we'll start getting a better idea of what they're thinking, and perhaps might even find it stronger than what they initially thought it would be. Might already be a depression, or it could even possibly become a low-grade tropical storm, as anything is possible in the Gulf. I did want to go ahead and show you guys, of course, the satellite presentation of it. So as you can see, that is the southern tip of Texas, and this is northeastern Mexico. This is Yucatan and Belize. And as you can see, it certainly is looking like something trying to form out there. Doesn't seem to have a whole lot of circulation at the moment, which is a good thing. But there definitely is convection. It's definitely causing thunderstorms. It appears still to be mostly disorganized, and you can see there's a lot of moisture that's around it as well, with thunderstorms firing off. Again, this isn't necessarily unusual for this time of the year, for that part of the world, but it's definitely something interesting to watch and see what the hurricane hunters find. Um, and then I also wanted to show you guys a little bit of the spaghetti models. As you know, I've been showing them with Erin, and it's always fun to kind of show them what they're thinking. So we're going to look at both the GFS and then the global models for it over here. So if we look at the global models, you can see most of them showing it actually making landfall over extreme southern Texas and going towards the west part of Texas, middle and west part of it. Um, so that is definitely something that I think we weren't exactly anticipating. We were thinking it was going to be more or less in Mexico. Now, this could change between now and the time it makes landfall tomorrow. But as far as I know, they're not expecting the type of rain that central Texas saw earlier this summer, unfortunately. So that is definitely some hopeful news for everyone. And then the GFS, which is ours, does show actually being on the Mexico side. So again, kind of a toss up. We don't know what it will be. I'm sure once they start putting in the data from the flights, we'll get a better idea of where it actually will make its landfall over. But in the meantime, this is what we have. So let's talk about the more pending or big storm that everybody's curious about. But before we do, I do want to kind of show again, as I mentioned this yesterday, a little bit about the water temperatures. As you know, you need very warm waters to produce hurricanes. It is technically their fuel source and helps them have rising humidity to create more storms and clouds in order to organize. So you can see here over there by northeastern Mexico and extreme southern Texas, well, just southern Texas in general, they do have very warm temperatures, which is part of the reason why they're thinking that a 98L might form into something. But again, it takes more than just perfect water temperatures to do it. It takes, wind. It takes time to sit and kind of grow, as well as time to just really get itself organized, which they don't think is going to be the case, at least as of this tonight of this update. So we'll see what happens tomorrow morning with that, but that is definitely important to note. If you do look over here out by the southeastern Atlantic, it does show the water's been a little bit cooler than the Gulf, which again isn't unusual. The Gulf is typically very, very warm, like bathtub water essentially. But as you see closer to Georgia and Florida, it is definitely 86, 85, 84. And then closer to Carolinas, surprisingly, South Carolina has 81, and off North Carolina is 83. So this is the type of water that we are expecting Erin to enter. So again, not surprising they're expecting her to strengthen and become a hurricane and possibly even a major hurricane, which is most likely. With even the National Hurricane Center saying that they can't really put a lid on how powerful she may get at this point. Um, there's some concern that she could, you know, maybe get to a 4 or 5 as well, unfortunately. But hopefully, she'll thread the very narrow path between the US and Bermuda and skip the Bahamas and rest of the islands, which we'll get into in a moment in just a second about the islands. So let's go ahead and get into the topic of Erin. So this is obviously the cone, which again, as I always mention, the cone is not to imply you're not going, if you're not in the cone, doesn't mean you're not going to get any implications or anything from the storm. Unfortunately, that's not how this works. The cone is strictly for what I think sensor of the storm, otherwise known as the eye, will track how close to you or where it will go. So you can see as you get closer to where it's showing for today, it's definitely more narrow and it does gradually widen out where there is uncertainty, including in that little hatched area over here. So again, more of the same. Does look like they are taking it closer to the Leeward Islands. Unfortunately, as you do notice, they do now have tropical storm watches. So, watch means conditions, tropical storm conditions could be felt within 48 hours. So that would, if she continues, most likely she will continue the track she's on. They will increase that upgrade at for to be a hurricane or tropical storm warning tomorrow at some point as well. So if you are in certain islands over there, which we'll list over which ones they did mention as those being in the tropical storm watch. Make sure you are taking time to make sure that you have everything you need to hunker down. You may be without power for a few days. We can't rule out power outages, unfortunately, as you know. These kind of systems are quite notorious for creating those, and make sure that you have, a way to cook or have shelf stable food that doesn't require any cooking. Make sure you have water. Again, sometimes it can contaminate water, so make sure you have bottled. Make sure you take the time tonight and tomorrow to charge up all your devices. And if you have battery packs, it's always a good idea to make sure that you have this charge and then also get your fuel if necessary if you do have a generator, and make sure that you are following all your rules and regulations to safely have it connected to your house in case you do lose power. So as you can see, they do still show a turn, but as you notice, they do have it again going closer to the Leeward Islands, to Puerto Rico, to the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and of course the Bahamas. It does look like they do think it still will thread itself between Bermuda and the U.S. Is worth noting that right now she is quite small, as you can see, kind of indicated in the little bit of the yellow-orange circle the X is by. That does show really where her estimation of her wind field is. As we mentioned previously, as you know, they have wind fields, tropical storm force, And then, of course, if she and when she is upgraded to a hurricane, she will get hurricane force winds closer to the eye, and that will push out the tropical storm winds a little bit further. Plus, they're saying she will actually physically grow as she makes more of a northwest turn and slows down. She's still moving west at 17 miles per hour, so that is pretty fast for a tropical system, hence why it seems like she's getting super close to the islands, and they've been very nervous, understandably, as anyone would be. So that is definitely worth noting. But here we are with that, and you can see she is producing, warnings for them, um, or watches, I should say. So let's go ahead and talk about where they have the watches. So, the Meteorological Service of Antigua and Barbuda has issued a tropical storm watch for Anguilla and Barbuda. The Meteorological Service of France has issued a tropical storm watch for Saint Martin and Saint Barthélemy. And the Meteorological Service of the Netherlands has issued a tropical storm watch for Saba and St. Eustatius, and Meteorological Service of St. Martin has issued a tropical storm watch for St. Martin. So again, these are all islands that are currently in the watch, which means again, typically they will possibly get these storm conditions, tropical storm force conditions within 48 hours. It will probably be upgraded as we get closer to 36 hours. I do believe, as we saw yesterday, they're thinking the earliest time that they start feeling some of the outer bands and winds of that will be tomorrow night, Friday night, so August 15th. Um, so again, make sure that you take rest of today and then tomorrow during the daytime, probably earlier in the morning into the early afternoon. Take your time, make sure you do have all your equipment, everything ready, just to be on the safe side, and it'll probably be upgraded by tomorrow morning to a warning. So again, watch means conditions are possible. Warning is conditions are expected. So right now, the same is possible within 48 hours. When they issue a warning, it will be that they are expected in 36 hours, those conditions, and the weather to continue to deteriorate for those islands. And some key messages that the National Hurricane Center has issued for Erin includes obviously heavy rainfall across the northernmost Leeward Islands, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, as well as southern and eastern Puerto Rico. It is worth noting that right now they're not showing watches for Puerto Rico. Now, during the actual discussion that they had for Erin, they did mention that due to the shear that she is currently encountering, that it is pushing her more west and um, more south as a part of the steering current. So again, they kind of moved it more west and more south, which was expected, especially with the model guidance that we do have. Again, we should start expecting better model runs with more precision, hopefully, by the time this weekend gets here, once he can get in. She is currently being investigated this evening and will continue being investigated throughout tomorrow and the weekend as well, to make sure that we are getting the most up-to-date information and have inputs and models so we can get the best picture. They're also sampling other parts of the atmosphere in and around her as well. Try to figure out her steering currents, but right now the shear is causing her to have this movement, and that is why they are issuing those watches for those islands. So Puerto Rico, as I said, right now isn't in that. Doesn't mean that between now and tomorrow they won't be. If she continues to track this way, we'll have to wait and see. As I mentioned, again, hurricanes are notorious for doing what they want and how they want. So there's a very good, I won't say very good shot, but there is definitely a percentage, maybe a low percentage, that she will continue to kind of go off track. You know, it's only so much, science can actually predict correctly. These systems do behave in a lot of ways like they have a mind of their own. So right now, they're just expecting rain for Puerto Rico, and may lead to isolated flash flooding or urban flooding along with landslides or mudslides this weekend into early next week. So again, if you are in the Leeward Islands, particularly the northernmost, U.S. or British Virgin Islands, as well as southern and eastern Puerto Rico, again, please, I cannot stress this enough. Take the time tonight and early tomorrow to get your ducks in a row so you can make sure that you and your family are safe. Also, let someone who is not going to be impacted by the storm to know what your plans are, what you're going to do, so that way that someone can check in on with you once you do eventually the storm moves and they're able to reach to you. Because again, there is a percentage that are good chance that some people will lose power and possibly cellular service as well. And then if anyone still uses landlines, I'm sure those will be impacted as well. Tropical storm conditions are possible for portions, as I mentioned, of the Leeward Islands, where the tropical storm watches are in effect. Beginning Saturday as the core of Erin passes north to those islands. So again, you really only have tonight and tomorrow, particularly earlier in the day, because the earliest possible when you could start experiencing tomorrow night. So again, make sure that you are getting everything put in place so you can hunker down safely and soundly and not be in, putting your life or your loved one's life at risk. If you're in mobile homes or know someone in mobile homes and you're able to help them stay in a stick-built home, please feel free to invite those people to make it a little bit safer. The wind shouldn't be too crazy in theory, but she'll be a hurricane as she pass over to the north, and some gusts might possibly get higher than the gusts that they're predicting as the possible highest ones that I'll show you in just a moment. So, again, make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones safely, and also any animals or any homeless people, again, help them as much as you can. Tropical storm conditions could also occur, as I mentioned, in portions of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico later into the weekend, and additional watches may be required tonight or Friday. So, as I mentioned, right now they're not in it, but don't be shocked if you do find yourself tomorrow morning in these watches. Again, watches just mean possible conditions within 48 hours. If she continues to track the way she is, that will be upgraded to a warning tomorrow for everyone. So again, right now it's just the northern Leeward Islands in the watch, with Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands possibly getting added into that later on. And of course, there's still uncertainty in what impacts could occur for the Bahamas and the east coast of the U.S. and Bermuda. We do know dangerous surf recurrence will be common across the western Atlantic basin next week, most likely. So it is worth noting that. So just, right now, no one is really safe. No one, I know people are saying, oh, she's going to be a fish storm. Everyone's going to be okay. Bermuda's going to be okay. The southeast coast is going to be okay. The mid Atlantic, Nova Scotia, New England, all of that stuff, what people like to say. Now, while that could be true, there is a possibility that could be true. And I'm not saying there isn't, it still could certainly not be the case. We could definitely see some impact, because as I mentioned yesterday, and we'll get into the newer model runs, but model runs we saw yesterday evening and so this morning were hinting at a more western direction. They did kind of shift a little bit back, a little bit more to the east of the U.S. coast. So that is worth noting. Those are, but again, we don't have the data input yet the hurricane hunters are finding out. So, we can only expect we'll get a better idea again into this weekend with the model runs. Once the data's put in and they can, sample the different parts of the atmosphere, they can put that in and run them, then we'll have a better idea. But again, right now, we just don't know what to expect when it comes to Erin as she makes her approach close to anyone else beyond what we know for the Leeward Islands at the moment. And speaking of Leeward Island, I did want to go ahead and show you guys the possible highest gusts, or wind gusts that you guys could be facing from Erin, who is still, like I said, a tropical storm, but will be a hurricane by the time she passes over. I made this graphic earlier today, so I wanted to share again. If you follow me on Facebook or on my YouTube page and you just saw this on the post, you don't mind seeing it again. But this is what we're thinking is the most likely highest wind gust. Again, depending on how strong she is, there is always possible that you might get wind gusts that is higher than this. And of course, power outages can happen from winds of this the speed, unfortunately. So that is worth noting, but this is what we're thinking. So, for Puerto Rico and the British and US Virgin Islands, 50 miles per hour. So that would be KM 80 kmh. For Anguilla and some of those others, 45. St. Kitts and Nevis, 40. Antigua and Barbuda is 45 along Anguilla. And then, of course, Montserrat, Guadeloupe, Dominica, and Martinique, 30 miles per hour. St. Lucia is not currently expected to deal with any of these wind gusts. I mean, probably breezy conditions still, but they are far enough south where they're most likely not going to feel those stronger winds. And then I also wanted to show the rip current risk that we are seeing. So as you can see over here by Puerto Rico and part of the Lesser Antilles, they do have a moderate risk. As you can see, we even have a moderate risk over there for mid-eastern Florida, and then low risk for rest of the coast on up to a little pocket of moderate over there by North Carolina. Um, Alabama or Florida has a little bit of a high risk over there by the Panhandle, sandwiched between two moderate, low risk over there right now by southern Texas, and then of course west coast of Florida as well. No data for the southern tip. So I thought that would be fascinating to see as we do talk about the chances of having rip currents and rough surf in the coming days. And so this part would change. So we'll continue to try to look at this. For Tropical Storm Erin rainfall forecast, again, so this is predominantly just talking about the Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico. If you notice the hashed area over here, they're saying that this is particularly lower confidence. They're not super confident in what they're predicting. But as you can see, they are thinking of 1 to 2 to 4 inches. So that's 25 to 50 or 50 to 100 mm. And then, as you can see, isolate up to 4 inches over there in some of the other Leeward Islands. Again, more northern ones, not really impacting the more southern ones. And then, of course, as you get closer to where they think her eye would track, you'll notice that those chances of rain much higher, but there's no islands out there, so that is not really applicable here in this data. So this will probably continue to change and grow as we continue to see her track more west and northwest. Um, Okay, so let's go ahead and look at her satellite presentation. She's definitely still got the shrimp look. She is still looking raggedy, as I mentioned yesterday and this morning, and that's because of the shear. The hurricane, so National Hurricane Center did say in the discussion that she is very much a tilted storm, meaning her convection, she is getting deep convection, which is what you need. You can actually kind of see a little bit of that with some of the little white over there and towards what you would think would be the center, but she is slanted and she's not stacked all the way as they would, or she probably would like to be um, for a hurricane, of course. Um, so again, she's still raggedy, but she's definitely got that shrimp look, and as you can see, she does appear to be grown physically across her wind and rain shield. Once she slows down, like I mentioned, she's moving at 17 miles per hour west currently, which is, like I said, a pretty fast clip for a tropical system moving. She will slow down before she makes that turn, northward turn that we're anticipating. And with that chance, she'll kind of sit and be able to churn the waters and be able to, again, physically grow. Her physical size of the storm. So we do anticipate her to grow, but right now she is relatively small, which is again a good thing for the Lesser Antilles right now and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. That means, smaller storm is better, but of course she does appear that she'll be tracking closer than they initially thought too. So you gotta take what you can with these things. But this is what she's currently looking at like tonight. And then let's talk about the spaghetti models. So for the euro, as you can see, again, they are showing really just the northeastern coast of North Carolina and over there by Maryland and Delaware and all those likes. And of course, we see some going over like Nova Scotia and Maritime Canada. Again, you can see really kind of where it gets more wide and swath of the models that are not in good consensus. So again, we just don't have a good idea. That should hopefully change over this weekend as we get more data and the model runs can read that and put that in and figure out what she's going to do and what's going to happen with her steering current. Currently, like I mentioned, she is having shear. Once the shear kind of lines up and they kind of get a weakness in the pressure that's causing the shear, high pressure over there. She's anticipated to make her north turn, but they just don't know the timing of when that will be, and they don't know how far west that will be for the high pressure, and we don't know when or where that turn will make. Will be closer to the Bahamas in the US? Will be closer to Bermuda? Will it, anything like that can happen? We just don't know. And then for the GFS, again, so you can see they do have one showing her kind of bouncing off the Carolina coast and getting very close to central Florida. Again, most of them taking her out more towards the middle. So again, very wide swath. We just don't have an idea on when and where that will be. So again, key messages for tonight's video. If you are in the Northern Leeward Islands or in the British or US Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico, please make sure that you're taking time today and tonight to make sure that you are ready for the storm. You'll probably start having to hunker down sometime tomorrow. Your current watches, what Puerto Rico is not in the current watches, or the Virgin Islands, but that could possibly change between now and then. But definitely for the Northern Leeward Islands, that will probably be upgraded to a warning sometime tomorrow. So you do want to make sure that you, again, have everything that you need, whether that is bottled water, flashlights, your devices charged, batteries for your flashlights, battery operated radio is always a good thing to have during this too. Be hunkered down for heavy rain and possible slides and mudslides that could happen. And just be ready for that and the wind, of course. Again, we are talking about gusts of wind that could be 50 miles or less as of what we saw the latest. Uh, but again, make sure you're taking time to get this. For those of us who are over there in the Bermuda or Bahamas or the Southeast Coast, we need to continue to monitor and pay attention. We are seeing some trends to more toward west, and even the National Hurricane Center is hinting that that might still be the case. They're noticing trends of that as well. Again, as I mentioned, they just don't know when the turn will be made. They believe it will be, but we just don't know when. And as we learned last year, unfortunately, with Hurricane Helene, sometimes you just can't predict these things and get things quite right. So, if you're anywhere from Florida to the Carolinas and Virginia, um, definitely Carolinas and down. Make sure you're watching, follow anyone that you can trust. I will be here, obviously, to continue to post updates daily as well as my nightly videos, and we'll get through this together. I will touch that it has been talked, and I've seen it on the internet and social media about next possible storm coming in after Erin off the coast of Africa. That is a possibility. We are now entering the peak of hurricane season, so we should expect it will be a busy next couple of months. Um, it is very likely it will be, and we will be doing more tracking of other systems as well. Um, so don't get too comfortable, even if you do get missed by Erin. Again, it's not a bad idea to make sure you are checking in with everything you need to have and get things refilled and organized as necessary, because even if you don't get hit with this one, there's no guarantee that will be the case when the next one comes. And it's not a question of if, but when the next one comes in the next few months. So, again, make sure you are following IBIS Weather on Facebook, YouTube. We do have an Instagram page that I'm trying to be more active on, and feel free to ask any questions. Make sure you're paying attention to any of your um, local meteorologists and your official government meteorological agencies as well. And we'll get through this and we'll see the sunny side afterwards. So, thank you guys for watching, and we'll have more updates tomorrow.